Good morning, Loudoun County. Good morning. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Thank you for that. Well, good morning. My name is Tony Howard. I am the president and the CEO of the Loudoun County Chamber of Commerce, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to the National Conference Center this morning for this special Loudoun Chamber event, the Virginia 10th Congressional District Candidates Debate, featuring Congresswoman Barbara Comstock and State Senator Jennifer Wexton. So perhaps you have noticed, I know that I have, that 2018 is shaping up to be a bit of an interesting political year in our country. And once again, Virginia's 10th Congressional District finds itself in the middle of the action as both parties vie for control of the United States House of Representatives. In the midst of all this political excitement, the Loudoun Chamber is proud to present today's program to offer the voters of the 10th Congressional District the opportunity to hear directly from these two candidates and to learn more about where they stand on the important business and economic issues facing our nation. Today's discussion will be based entirely on the issues contained in the Loudoun Chamber's public policy agenda, which means the candidates today will hear questions that will be focused exclusively on business and quality of life issues. Our intention is to provide you, our audience, both here at the National Conference Center and those that are watching online and later on C-SPAN, want to give you all a better appreciation for where these candidates stand on the issues that are most important to your business and to our economy, and to use that knowledge to make your decision on November 6th. Now, before we get started, I'd like to recognize the Loudoun Chamber's many valued partners for today's program. Now, in recognition of the important nature of this race, we are proud to present this debate in partnership with the 10th Congressional District's top business organizations. And they are, in alphabetical order, the Dulles Regional Chamber of Commerce, the Greater McLean Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Wexton Chamber of Commerce, the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the Tysons Regional Chamber of Commerce, the Northern Virginia Technology Council, and George Mason University's Schar School of Policy and Government. Can I please ask you for a round of applause for our partners this morning? It also gives me great pleasure to recognize the many great Loudoun Chamber sponsors, partners, VIPs, and others that have helped make today's program possible. Now, this event is part of the Loudoun Chamber's Policymaker Series, and I'd like to begin by thanking our 2018 series signature sponsor, Inova Loudoun Hospital, who is represented this morning by Stacy Metcalf, their Director of Government and Community Relations. Stacy is going to be on the panel this morning asking questions, but I'd like to ask all of you to please recognize Inova Loudoun Hospital for their great work. I also missed an opportunity, and this could be a career death now for me. She's also the second vice chair of the Chamber's Board of Directors, and very soon will be my boss. So, way to go, Stacy. We love you. I'd also like to thank our spotlight sponsor for today's event, the Northern Virginia Electrical Cooperative, and their president and CEO, Mr. Stan Furberg. Now, Stan's going to join us on stage in a couple of minutes to share the Novex story, but I'd like to ask all of you to thank Stan and his team for their support for today's event. Chamber is very proud to have many outstanding other sponsors for our Policymaker Series, and I'd like to recognize our advocate sponsors, beginning with Access Point Public Affairs, the Bank of Clark County, Bechtel, BNY Mellon Wealth Management, Comstock, McGuire Woods Consulting, the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, Middleburg Bank, a division of Access National Bank, Northern Virginia Community College, the National Sports Medicine Institute, Summit Community Bank, and Toth Financial Advisory Corporation. While I catch my breath, can you give all of our advocate sponsors a round of applause? We also have many dynamite enterprise sponsors for our series this year, and they are beginning with Dominion, Falcon Heating and Air Conditioning, Integris Holdings, M&T Bank, HHMI, Genelia Research Campus, and George Washington University's Virginia Science and Technology Campus. Please, a round of applause for our enterprise sponsors. Also want to say thank you to a few other partners that work with us, not just on the Policymaker Series, but throughout the year to help make our programming successful, and we work with them to help them build the economy and quality of life here in the county. So thank you to our two partners, the Loudoun County Department of Economic Development, as well as Loudoun County's Economic Development Authority. Thank you to those partners, as well as to our media yes, thank you. Thank you as well to our media sponsor, Loudoun Now, as well as our event sponsor, the National. So you probably noticed a few cameras set up in the back, more than a few. They follow me pretty much everywhere I go, so I'm used to it, but you might not be. If you're all going to be paying attention to what's happening on the stage this morning, but folks who couldn't join us today can follow today's debate on the Chamber's Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel. And I want to thank our good friends at Media X Presentations for making that possible to bring today's debate and the discussion that will take place this morning to hopefully thousands of our followers on social media. So thank you to Media X for that. In addition to our distinguished candidates, we are joined by a number of elected officials and other VIPs. And I want to recognize them and thank them for taking time from their busy schedule to join us. I'm going to begin with Congresswoman Barbara Comstock. We also we expect to be joined by her colleague in the United States House of Representatives, Congressman Jerry Connolly. Is Congressman Connolly with us? All right, if he does. From the Virginia Senate, we are joined by Senator Barbara Favola and Senator Jennifer Wexton. From the Virginia House of Delegates, we are very pleased to be joined by Delegate Kathleen Murphy, Delegate Jennifer Boysko, Delegate David Reed, Marcus Simon, and Delegate Rip Sullivan. How about for our Virginia delegates that are here today? We have all 5 of Loudoun County's constitutional officers who have joined us today. So a big round of applause. So I'm going to read all 5, and then we're going to applaud for them, please. The Clerk of the Court, Gary Clemens, Sheriff Mike Chapman, Treasurer Roger Cern, Commissioner of the Revenue, Bob Wirtz, and Commonwealth's Attorney, Mr. Jim Plowman. Thank you to our constitutional officers. From the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors, we have, looks like we have the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors with us this morning. All 9 of them are here. So I don't want you to get blisters from clapping, so let's save it again until we get to the end. We are joined by the Chair of the Board, Phyllis Randall, Vice Chair, Ralph Varner, and Supervisors Matt Letourneau, Suzanne Volpe, Tony Buffington, Ron Myers, Corinne Sains, and Kristen Umstadt. Thank you to all the supervisors. You know, they just got off work at about 1:30 last night, so I really am pleased and really impressed that they were able to join us here. From the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, our neighbors, thank you very much for joining us this morning for breakfast. Supervisor Pat Herity and Supervisor John Faust. Almost there. From the town of Leesburg Town Council, Mayor Kelly Burke, Vice Mayor Suzanne Fox, and council members Ron Campbell and Vanessa Maddox. Thank you very much to the Leesburg Town Council for joining us. And from the Loversville Town Council, Councilman Mike Dunlop. Thank you very much, Councilman Dunlop, for joining us. All right, so this is the part where I look around nervously and ask, have I missed anyone? Delegate John Bell. Delegate Bell, thank you very much for joining us today. I apologize for that oversight. Anyone else? Great. Thank you very much to all the elected officials and other VIPs that have joined us today. I'd also like to recognize the Chamber's VIPs. Those are the members of our Board of Directors, represented by Mr. Mitch Sproul from Toth Financial Advisory. If I could ask Mitch and all the rest of the Chamber's Board to please stand and be recognized. Okay, now it is time to get started. I'm going to begin by giving you a quick overview of the rules for today's debate. And I wanted to let you know that these rules have been negotiated with and agreed to by both the Comstock and Wexton campaigns. Now, to begin today's debate, each candidate will be given 2.5 minutes for their opening statement and will close with a 2-minute closing statement. Now, based on the results of a pre-debate coin toss, Senator Wexton will be the first to make an opening statement and the first to make her closing statement. Senator Wexton will also begin by answering the very first question. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to respond to the question that is directed to them on their turn. The other candidate, in turn, will have 2 minutes to respond or answer that question, that very same question. Loudoun County Chamber staff member will serve as the timekeeper. He will raise a yellow card to indicate that the candidate has 30 seconds to complete their response. A red card will be raised to indicate that the 2 minutes has expired and they should conclude their answer. The order in which the candidates will be asked the questions will alternate until all time allotted for the debate has expired, at which time we'll begin those closing statements. The candidates will not be allowed to question each other. As moderator, it is within my discretion to redirect a candidate on their response or to ask a follow-up question if I feel the candidate has not specifically asked or answered the question they have been asked. Candidates are only permitted to offer spoken responses. They are not allowed to bring any charts or pictures or graphs or other visual displays to the dais. Now, as a reminder, all the questions in today's debate will be business-focused, and none of them have been shared with the candidates in advance. And I have another friendly reminder for you. I'm sure it's not necessary, but please let me go ahead and do so anyway. I'd like to ask you all to refrain from any loud, sustained, or otherwise disrupting or distracting behavior that will interfere with your guests and our guests' ability to hear from our two candidates. Now, polite applause is okay. I don't want to be a total killjoy about this, but just want to make certain that we give every opportunity to two candidates and respect the time that they've given us so that we can hear the answers they're giving to the questions that we will give to those. And I appreciate it if you did that out of courtesy to your fellow audience members as well. So thank you for your understanding and cooperation on that point. Before we introduce our panelists and our candidates, I want to give you all permission to be on your phone today. Looking out, I see some of you have already taken that permission. But you can only do it for one reason and one reason only. That's if you're sharing your thoughts with your legion of social media followers about the information you're receiving this morning from the candidates. And if you do so, I ask you a courtesy to please use the hashtag, I almost said hash brown, the hashtag Virginia10Debate, VA10Debate. Sound more like my mother every day. All right. It is now a great pleasure to introduce our panel of business leaders who will ask questions of our candidates this morning. First, please welcome Stacy Metcalf, Director of Government and Community Relations for Inova Loudoun Hospital and Second Vice Chair of the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors. Welcome, Stacy. Next to her is Maggie Parker, Senior Vice President, Community and Communications and Community Outreach for the Comstock Companies and the Chair of the Loudoun Chamber's Public Policy Committee and Chair-elect of the Greater Wexton Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Maggie. Seated next to them is Mr. Jeffrey Novak. He is Deputy General Counsel at Oath and a member of the Board of Directors at the Northern Virginia Technology Council, as well as Chair of NBTC's Tech PAC. Welcome, Mr. Novak. Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce our spotlight sponsor, Mr. Stan Ferber. He is the President and CEO of Novak. Stan's going to come to the podium and share a few words on Novak and introduce our candidates. So, Stan, welcome.
Well, good morning. What a great crowd. Novak has been a sponsor of these debates at Loudoun County Chamber events for a number of years, and we're delighted to be the sponsor, the spotlight sponsor again this year. So what a great crowd. Tony was telling me before we started this morning that we have about 550 of you here this morning, and I think that's the largest crowd that we've ever gathered for one of these debate events. I want to spend a couple minutes sharing some good news about Novak. This is a name, J.D. Power, one that you recognize, probably the nation's eminent authority on quality of products and services. And for the past 19 years, J.D. Power has been surveying customers of the largest electric utility companies in the country. To qualify for this annual survey, the company has to have at least 100,000 residential meters. So in this year's survey, there were 138 brands, many of them from the Mid-Atlantic and from the D.C. metro area. And of those 138 companies, Novak was ranked #1 in the country for power quality and reliability, which is the most heavily weighted category in the 6 categories within the study. Here you see a breakdown by category. Novak was also the only company of the 138 that finished in the top 10 in all 6 of the categories within the study. And the weighting is shown there in the little blue circles next to the first 4 categories there of power quality, communication, corporate citizenship, and customer service. The other 3 categories included customer service online and the price-value proposition and billing and payment. With regard to the Mid-Atlantic region, Novak was ranked #1. You see a bunch of names that you recognize, some Virginia companies, but also, in addition to Virginia companies, those in the D.C. metro area and the rest of the Mid-Atlantic region. And here are the national results for overall customer satisfaction. Whoops, there we go. That's the national rankings. Novec was ranked number 3 in the country. The top 2 companies were 2 systems from Georgia, but we were pretty close to being number 1. Back in 2012, we were number 1 in the country in overall customer satisfaction, but the point of this slide is that the fact that we finished as well as we did in power quality and reliability and all of the categories, and particularly overall customer satisfaction, is this was no accident. This is a trend that we've been able to maintain as a result of our service to our 169,000 customers in our 6-county service territory. Again, we were best in the D.C. metro area. Our lights were on in excess of 99.99% of the time last year. And so when you talk about power that you can count on, we have the statistics and the results to back that up. So that's the Novec story. I have been given the distinct honor and privilege this morning of getting to introduce our 2 candidates. And first is the incumbent, Representative Barbara Comstock. You know Barbara first as a member of the General Assembly and now as a member of the House of Representatives. She has lived in the 10th District for more than 35 years with her husband, Chip, and they have also worked and raised their 3 children and have started a business. Barbara has served her community for a number of decades at her children's schools, in the federal government. You may recall that she was working in Frank Wolf's office for a number of years, also in the General Assembly, and now just finishing up her 2nd term in the House of Representatives. She's been busy while she's been in the House. Congresswoman Comstock serves on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, the House Administration Committee, and the Science-Based Technology Committee, and she is the chairwoman of the Subcommittee on Research and Technology. Barbara's a graduate of Georgetown University Law and Middlebury College, where she graduated with a BA in political science, I apologize. Please welcome Congresswoman Barbara Comstock to the stage. Good morning, Barbara. Well, Barbara, I think that took the applause meter way off the scale there. Senator Jennifer Wexton has served Northern Virginia for almost 2 decades, first as a prosecutor, an advocate for children, and also as a member of the state Senate. From 2001 to 2005, Senator Wexton served as an assistant Commonwealth's attorney for Loudoun County, where there she successfully prosecuted hundreds of trials, including the prosecution of criminals who committed domestic violence and sexual offense crimes. Senator Wexton later worked in private practice and was elected to the Virginia State Senate in January of 2014 in a special election and was reelected again in 2015. She's a native of the Washington area, graduated with honors from the University of Maryland at College Park, and earned her law degree from the College of William and Mary. She lives in Leesburg with her husband Andrew, sons Matthew and Jamie, and their 2 Labrador retrievers. So, those of you gathered here this morning, please welcome State Senator Jennifer Wexton to the stage. Good morning, Jennifer.
All right, Stan, thank you very much for supporting this year's Virginia 10th Congressional District Candidates Debate. And thank you for the great work that you do at Novec as a Novec member. Rural cooperatives don't have customers, they have members. And as a member, I can attest to that 99.99% uptime because my son never turns off anything that consumes electricity, including lights, computers, television sets, and the like. So they seem to be constantly on. I think that's a testament to the great work that you and your team do. Congresswoman Comstock and Senator Wexton, first, before we begin, I just wanted to offer my personal gratitude and appreciation for both of you for agreeing to step up and seek this opportunity to represent our community in the United States House of Representatives. Leadership is always necessary. It's probably never been more necessary than it is in these times, and we need good people to step up and attempt to be those kind of leaders. I just want to offer that congratulations and thanks that I have for your decision to run for the United States House representing the 10th CD. So we're going to begin with our opening statements. As a reminder, both candidates have 2.5 minutes for their opening statement. A yellow card will go up when they have 30 seconds remaining, red when they are complete. So based on that coin toss, Senator Wexton, you shall go first.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning. I'm Jennifer Wexton, and I'm running to be your next representative in Congress. I'm a mom, a former Loudoun County prosecutor, and now a state senator. As a prosecutor, I put dangerous criminals and sex offenders behind bars. As a state senator, I am proud to have passed over 40 pieces of legislation, all with bipartisan support while serving in the minority party. During my time in the state Senate, I have always worked with the chambers from this region to advance priorities important to Northern Virginia businesses, and I'm proud to have received a 100% score from the Northern Virginia Chamber Partnership. I'm honored to have called Leesburg my home for the past 14 years, where I live with my husband and our 2 sons, who are students in Loudoun County's public schools. As a state senator, I've worked hard every day to make my constituents' lives better, advocating for and passing legislation that eases traffic congestion, makes our children safer, combats the heroin and opioid crisis, and brings more businesses and jobs to Northern Virginia. I believe access to affordable, quality health care is a right for all, not a privilege for the few. I'm proud to have been part of the fight to expand Medicaid here in Virginia this year and extend access to affordable health care to more than 300,000 hardworking Virginians and return billions of dollars to Virginia's economy. In the General Assembly, I have stood up to the gun lobby by introducing and co-sponsoring legislation that would implement universal background checks, close the gun show loophole, bring back Virginia's 1 handgun a month law, and ban bump stocks. I'm proud to have worked across the aisle to make real progress in reducing gun violence by getting guns out of the hands of domestic abusers. We live in a troubling time for our country. We have an administration in Washington that is constantly assaulting many of the values that Americans hold dear. Assaults on the free press, assaults on the independent judiciary, and sexist and racially charged language have become all too commonplace. I stepped up to run for Congress because I truly fear how much damage can be done to our country in the next 2 years by this president and the Congress that enables him, but also because I have proven that I am a thoughtful and successful legislator who delivers real bipartisan results for my constituents. And I know that we can and must be better than the status quo. Thank you for having me here today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Senator Wexton. Congresswoman Comstock, your opening statement, please.
This election is about results versus the resistance. My opponent is rated the most left-wing state senator and has said she wants to represent the resistance. I want to and have represented you and have gotten results like a booming economy fueled by our tax cuts, more money in the pockets of our families and businesses. My bill to double the child tax credit to $2,000 was included in that tax bill. Lower business taxes, 4.2% growth, record low unemployment, 68% of blue-collar workers getting pay raises, highest median family income ever, small business and manufacturing optimism at a record high, less red tape and regulations, my data center bill that still yields $150 million a year to Loudoun County alone. A study requested by the Loudoun Board found that most Loudoun residents get tax cuts. My opponent opposes these. That's why I have all of the endorsements from the groups that are focused on jobs and the economy. My staff and I meet with hundreds of constituents every week. We've listened to you and have pushed bipartisan successes, such as rebuilding and fully funding our military, ending sequestration, and saying no to government shutdowns. And I am the only member of Congress in the region who has never voted for a government shutdown. We got a new veterans center in Leesburg in record time. My Project Safe Neighborhoods bill is providing funds to battle MS-13 gang crime, as well as gun crime and drug crime. I've been endorsed by the Police Benevolent Association. My sexual harassment resolution is protecting women in the workplace already. a record $4 billion to battle the opioid crisis, record funding for the NIH. The Stop School of Violence Act is protecting our students and teachers. And I successfully fought for against those trying to move flights from Dulles Airport and have secured Metro funding every year I've been in Congress. And I'm now fighting for the pay raises for our federal employees. Finally, these are results to celebrate and embrace, not resist. These are results that unite us, that are growing our economy, that are making us a stronger economy, a stronger country here and internationally, and they give us a strong record of success to build on. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much to both of you. It's time to begin with our questions, and we shall begin with Stacy Metcalf from Inova Loudoun Hospital. Stacy.
Good morning, Congresswoman Comstock and Senator Wexton. Thank you for joining us today. As Tony indicated, the first question. Hello? Hello?
Test.
There you go. All right. Well, I will start all over again. Thank you, Congresswoman Comstock and Senator Wexton, for being here today. Our first question, as Tony indicated, will be directed at Senator Wexton. Last year, Congress adopted and the President signed into law a sweeping tax reform bill that lowered the corporate and individual income tax rates for most Americans. How would you describe the benefits or the shortcomings of this legislation, and how would you make it better?
We need a tax system that is fair and that benefits the middle class. The Comstock Trump tax scam does the opposite. Republicans have shown us their priority on taxes. Republicans have shown us their priority on taxes. Over 4/5 of the benefits of that tax law goes to the top 1%. They're mortgaging our children's and our grandchildren's futures by permanently raising the deficit by $1 trillion a year. In fact, within 2 years, interest on the debt will be the fastest growing part of the federal budget. Y'all are business people. You know that that is not a sustainable model. It's not a sustainable model for a business, and it's certainly not good for our nation. It will severely impact America's ability to compete in the world. And the cap on the state and local interest deduction negates much of the benefit for many Northern Virginia families. In fact, big corporations are spending 98 times more on stock buybacks than they have on wage increases or bonuses. And part 2 of the Trump Comstock plan is to pay for the tax cuts on the backs of federal workers and retirees. My opponent has already voted to cancel the federal workers' pay raises that were scheduled to take place. Next on the block, Social Security and Medicare. In Virginia, we can't keep printing money like our friends across the Potomac do. I'm proud to have balanced 8 budgets during my time in the state Senate. Our tax priorities need to benefit the middle class and encourage business and wage growth, but my opponent's plan does neither.
Congresswoman Comstock, please.
Thank you. 2 years ago on this stage, my opponent, Loudoun Bennett, who was a businesswoman, said we needed to have corporate tax cuts and business tax cuts. And I agreed, and we did. Now we need to make sure we expand on those tax cuts. Interestingly, in the combination of having those tax cuts and increasing our defense spending, which was so important because our military had been hollowed out, we now have a $550 million surplus in Virginia. That is one of the benefits of our tax cuts, are that the states are now reaping a $20 billion estimated windfall from that. And recently, Secretary Aubrey Lane was asked, to what do you attribute this $550 million surplus in Virginia? And he answered, and to his credit, said, well, a lot of it has to do with we stopped the sequestration and we are now spending on defense again and the federal tax cuts. Those are both measures that I advocated and fought for. I'm one of the only members, I think I may be the only member in the region who voted for both the budget that fully funded our military as well as those tax cuts. We're seeing the benefits every day. When we have an economy that is booming the way it is now, it makes every issue that we have to deal with, poverty, homelessness, Social Security, Medicare, easier when we have more money coming in. We are already seeing, and CBO just estimated, did their new estimates, I believe, in the past couple of weeks, where they are showing all the billions in additional revenue that are going to be coming in. We're seeing that revenue here in Virginia, and now we are seeing it on the federal level. Going forward, what we need to do is continue to have those tax cuts. I want to make the personal tax cuts permanent, and I want to expand the personal tax cuts and have further personal tax cuts. And also would like to see more small business tax cuts also, because we know that's the engine driving it. But I was thrilled when we did things like the R&D tax credit is included in that tax bill, something the technology community has always wanted. I passed it in the state, signed by Governor McAuliffe. I was thrilled to see it in this package signed by the president.
Thank you very much, Congressman Comstock. Very good. We're moving on to our second question, which will be asked by Maggie Parker. Maggie, please.
Good morning, Congresswoman Comstock. In January of this year, President Trump imposed tariffs on a variety of imports, including solar panels, washing machines, steel, and aluminum. As of Monday, the U.S. is going to impose more tariffs on up to $200 billion worth of imports, with a particular focus on Chinese goods. Where do you stand on the use of tariffs to protect certain American industries and their impact on our economy?
Well, as you know, I am a free trader. I voted for TTP. I supported free trade, and I always have in my career. Certainly when I worked for Congressman Wolf, that was his position, and I've continued that. In 2016, we know there wasn't a free trade candidate on the ballot, as we know. So now we are dealing with how do we work together to make sure we don't have any nefarious, any bad benefits from these negotiations. The ultimate goal here is to get better deals. For example, with China, the ultimate goal is to get China to play by a set of rules, to quit stealing our intellectual property, to quit subsidizing products, and to play fair. So we know tariffs, I oppose tariffs. I have been working with our farmers, with all of our business community to talk to the administration and work with my colleagues in Congress about how we are going to work through this process, because the ultimate goal is to get better trade deals. We're already seeing some of that with Mexico, and we want to have a rules-based bilateral trade with a lot of groups. Also with NAFTA, a trilateral trade is certainly what I prefer. So I will work with my colleagues to push and have free trade, because it'll make a strong economy, and I think this is a short-lived negotiating posture. That's certainly, when I talk to the business community, that's what they're seeing this as, so that we get better long-term deals. And with a NAFTA deal being 25 years old or so, it certainly can use some improvement. So I'm happy to see that. But I think we are going to need to make sure that we stay on this. When I go around and talk to businesses, I tell them, tell us how this is impacting your business, so I can let the Treasury Department know, I can let the White House know, I can let all of my colleagues in Congress know, so that we can highlight how we can get the best trade deals possible and move our economy forward.
Thank you so much. Senator Wexton, the same question, please.
We know how tariffs are affecting our economy. It's hurting our businesses, and it's hurting our consumers. President Trump has needlessly and recklessly imposed tariffs that are hurting Americans. And now he wants to pay billions of dollars as a temporary bailout to farmers. They don't want a bailout from the government. They want to sell their products on an open market. It's impacting local businesses. Our apple farmers in Winchester, Catoctin Creek here in Loudoun County had just started exporting to Great Britain, and now that's really gonna impact their business plan. Congress has an opportunity to step up and stand up to this president, and they have not done so. I will when I go to Congress.
Thank you so much. We are moving on to our third question, which will be asked by Jeffrey Novak. Mr. Novak, please.
Good morning, Senator Wexton. Card check and PLAs. Do you support the right of America's workers to a secret ballot election to decide whether to form a union? And similarly, do you support the imposition of project labor agreements on all federally funded projects?
Unions brought America the weekend, paid medical leave, vacation time, and they produce a quality product for a great price. I do support project labor agreements, and we found that when we implement them, we end up with projects that are completed on time and under budget, like the 495 hot lanes. There have been a lot of war on American unions, and in Virginia, there was an attempt to enshrine right to work in the Constitution. That's simply union bashing. People need to have the right to unite and come together and fight for quality working conditions. What we've seen in Virginia with this low bid and low price contract is that we end up with a lower quality product. And we're seeing that with phase 2 of the Silver Line, where there's currently a federal case going on where there was subpar materials used for the concrete in the stations, and that's going to cost us all a lot more money in the long run. We need to support our workers, and we need to support our unions.
Thank you so much, Senator Wexton. Congresswoman Comstock, the same question, please.
Thank you. I do support a secret ballot, and when I was in the state legislature, I enacted the legislation that passed to enshrine that in our law in Virginia to have a secret ballot. I do support that on a federal level also to be entitled to that secret ballot in any union elections. And certainly would like to see things like ambush elections and anything where you aren't allowed to have your secret ballot and be able to work together not be part of the process. When I worked on the secret ballot in the private sector, interestingly enough, some of the people that worked on it with me were George McGovern, because when he became a business owner, he realized he wants to be able to control his business, be able to have, talk to his workers, but also be able to have them have a secret ballot. So I think that's very important. I also passed the law that banned mandated project labor agreements. We should not have mandatory project labor agreements forced on any of our businesses. They can, if they work out competitively, they can do that. They can include that in their projects, and certainly many projects do include them. But we also, I believe Ken Plum voted for that bill, if I'm not mistaken, a Democrat, and it was used so that we could have our funding stretch further on both on the federal level, the state level, and make sure we're using our transportation dollars wisely. There's a big difference on my opponent on these two issues, obviously. She has filled out surveys saying she opposes Virginia's right-to-work statute, not just that amendment she mentioned, but she opposes having Virginia as a right-to-work state. And I believe Virginia as a right-to-work state, a low-tax, low-regulation state that protects our employers as well as provides those opportunities to employees to join a union if they want. That low-tax, low-regulation, right-to-work status is why we attract so many businesses and why we are doing so much better than many states to the north that impose those kind of rules.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Comstock. All right, we're moving on to our next round of questions. Stacey Metcalf will ask this first question, and she will pose it to Congresswoman Comstock.
A functioning metro rail system is vital to Northern Virginia's economy and future growth potential. The system is currently facing significant challenges. What do you believe is the federal government's proper role regarding Metro in terms of financial and system oversight?
Well, since I have been in Congress, and even before, I have worked to support Metro, and every year the PREA funding, that's $150 million from the federal level, I have made sure, as a member of the majority and on the Transportation Committee, that money would be included in the budget. Because of some of the dysfunction at Metro, oftentimes members, even on my own side, would try and remove that money, and I have battled and fought to get that in there. It is again in this year's budget, and I support that. But I set out after, I think, one of the first month that I was in Congress, we had that terrible fire and accident where there was loss of life. So I think I'm the only member of Congress that has actually attended Metro board meetings. I went there when they've done these studies. I've worked with people like Jim Dyke who is actually a Democrat, who is a former secretary in Virginia, but has been somebody who's been on the Metro improvement boards over years. And I sat down with him and former Mayor Tony Williams of D.C. in the Federal City Council, and we put together a bill that was a compromise bill where we worked with a lot of different stakeholders in the process, worked closely with Metro and General Manager Paul Wiedefeld to provide more money to Metro. Now, my hat's off to the state legislature, and I think probably with the prospect of Amazon perhaps coming, and Maryland and D.C. and Virginia were able to put together a package this year. So after that package was put together, I went back to the stakeholders, and I've now introduced a new bill, which is Grants for Reliable, Efficient, and Accountable Transit Act. I'm pleased. It's a scaled-down bill that will still continue to provide that $150 million that is then matched by Maryland, Virginia, and D.C., but we're going to require some of the reforms that have been recommended on a bipartisan basis by people like former Mayor Anthony Williams, by Paul Wiedefeld, that'll make it easier to have long-term spending. And I think that's an area where my opponent and I really do disagree, because she tried to flout the 3% cap that was put on there. She even went to a board to run roughshod over there, and it would have really hurt
I apologize,
Metro.
but your time is up. Senator Wexton, the same question, please.
Thank you. Metro is of vital importance to the economic growth of this region. Phase 2 of the Silver Line is going to totally transform eastern Loudoun, as it already has those areas on Phase 1. But Metro has been mismanaged and underfunded for decades. Its capital and maintenance needs have been deferred until they reached a crisis stage. I was proud to be part of the solution this year in Virginia, where we, for the first time in 40 years, came up with Virginia's fair share of dedicated and continuing capital funding. But there are things that Congress needs to do to help get Metro back to good. Congress needs to make sure Metro is safe and reliable now and in the future. And for a part of that, the federal government needs to pay its fair share. Metro moves 1/3 of the federal workforce takes Metro to and from work every day. They need to renew the PREA funds for another 10 years to give Metro access to predictable capital revenue, to go with what Virginia, Maryland, and D.C. have already done. And Metro needs to contribute a fair share to the operating costs of Metro, of the system. And there are reforms that need to be made in the governance and management of Metro. There's no question about that. And we need to keep costs under control. Now, my opponent, by contrast, she didn't even want the Silver Line. She voted against it, but that didn't stop her from showing up at the ribbon cutting and taking credit. Her proposed Metro bill in December was so extreme, she didn't even get a single regional co-sponsor. We need someone in Congress who will work across the aisle to find solutions, not just grandstand.
Very good. Thank you so much, Senator Wexton. Our next question will come from Maggie Parker, and Maggie, you will direct that question to Senator Wexton, please.
Certainly. Senator Wexton, the Loudoun Chamber has long supported efforts to reduce energy use and improve the quality of our air and water through incentives that support private sector efforts to develop new technologies, create more walkable communities, and encourage land conservation programs. How would you, as a member of Congress, work to support these or similar efforts?
I agree that small businesses are best suited, and business is best suited to create jobs and protect things, but government can and should have a role. Regulations are not necessarily the answer to everything. At their best, they're much needed protections, but we are better off incentivizing actions. So in the state Senate, I have worked to do things like incentivize solar, community solar, to get people more access to that. We have worked to make sure that conservation land easements are continuing to be strong. These are all things that we can do at the federal level as well. There are many, many ways to improve the quality of our life here in Virginia, and I think that working through public and private partnerships help us do that.
Very good. Thank you so much, Senator Wexton. Congresswoman Comstock, the same question, please.
Okay, I'm sorry, the question was on energy?
Yes,
Energy
incentives.
Okay.
Yes.
No, sorry. I have always supported in all of the above energy policy and how we approach this, and I think technology in our innovation economy here in Virginia is a great way that we can be providing, more advances in energy. I support, solar. I support wind. I support making sure we can continue to drill and to get all the energy we need, because we know, particularly for the energy, very needy businesses that we have here, our data centers, our whole technology community, we have to have affordable, reliable energy. And the way you're going to do that is to put incentives, and certainly we have lots of tax incentives that are in the current tax bill. The R&D tax credit, supports a lot of that type of innovation. And in order to make sure we are going, again, the affordable, reliable energy, we can't be putting mandates on energy to do things in a certain way that would then harm our economy. So this always has to be balanced, but I don't think it's a false choice to have to choose between advancements in the economy and moving forward and being energy efficient. That's part of bringing your costs down, is to be energy efficient. It's part of being able to expand our jobs and opportunities. So I think we are in Virginia in the sweet spot to be able to do both.
Very good. Thank you so much, Congressman Comstock. Our next question will come from Jeffrey Novak. And Mr. Novak, please direct that question to Congresswoman Comstock.
Representative Comstock, the Affordable Care Act and the changes it brought to our healthcare system are still subject to an awful lot of debate more than 8 years after the legislation was enacted. What would you suggest Congress do to improve the act, and what ideas do you have to improve healthcare quality, expand coverage, and curb the continuing rapid rise in costs to employers and families both?
I think on healthcare, we have to do what has always been done on healthcare before, is we have to have bipartisan solutions. Obamacare itself was a totally partisan bill that wasn't done collaboratively, and we've continued to see problems with it. But on the same side, when we had to repeal it, I did not support the repeal bill that we ultimately ended up with, because it didn't protect to the sufficient degree that I think we need to do is pre-existing conditions and deal with a lot of the basics that we know health insurance needs. So again, you didn't have bipartisan on on how we were going to repeal it, or bipartisan with the initial bill. It is a very flawed bill. There's lots of it that is collapsing right now. And so I think what a lot of us think we need to do now is to do that piece by piece change and reform. We've done things already like expand health savings accounts and giving people more opportunity in the VA system. We have already provided more choice for our veterans so that they aren't waiting for any care, that they are entitled to get that care wherever and as quickly as they can get it. We have also repealed the medical device tax so that great companies like K2M here in Loudoun can expand like they would like to and expand here. So these are some of the things we've started to do, but now we need to stabilize the insurance marketplace, have consumer-driven plans, make it easier for small businesses to buy insurance. I certainly continue to support being able to buy across state lines. We can, again, with technology, use healthcare data and technology to improve the system so that we don't have to always spend more on healthcare. We can, again, use it more efficiently. And I'd love to talk about that more, because on my science committee, we've had a lot of hearings related to that. And then certainly how we deal with mental health, pre-existing conditions, how we use the healthcare system, the whole comprehensive healthcare system, where you have clinics in places that make sure the underserved are getting that access that they need. Because even though we had Medicaid expansion, unfortunately, we don't have the doctors and people there. You might have a card, but you don't have a healthcare provider.
Thank you so much, Congressman Comstock. It is now Senator Wexton's turn to answer that same question. Excuse me, Senator Wexton, it's your turn to answer that same question. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe access to quality, affordable health care is a right for all, not a privilege of the few. The rising cost of health care is one of the greatest challenges facing American families. In Virginia, I was proud to be part of Virginia's Medicaid expansion, where we expanded access to affordable health care to up to 400,000 needy Virginians. And that's good not just for Virginia's physical health, but also for our fiscal health. It's going to bring more than $5 million a day back to Virginia, and businesses are already hiring to meet the new demand. There are things that the federal government can and should do immediately to help stabilize our healthcare markets. They need to take measures to stabilize the individual markets and bring premiums under control. They need to allow Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices. We already do this at the VA. That could save Medicare $2.8 billion a year. And the FDA needs to do more to speed the approval of generics and biosimilar drugs that are cheaper than name brand drugs. In contrast, my opponent voted to repeal Obamacare 6 times. She voted to repeal the individual mandate, and as a result, premiums in Virginia are going to go up by up to 64% in the coming year. For the past 8 years, my opponent and Republicans in Congress have been preaching a message of repeal and replace. Their actions show that they have no interest in solutions, only sabotage. Unlike them, when I go to Congress, I'll work across the aisle to find real solutions.
Very good. Thank you so much, Senator Wexton. We are going to begin the third round of questions, and I'm going to turn to Stacey Metcalf to pose this question to Senator Wexton, please.
Senator Wexton, most CEOs and economists agree that developing an educated, skilled, and adaptable workforce is amongst the most important issues challenging America's economic growth. What role do you believe Washington should play in addressing that issue?
I am entirely the product of public education from grade school through grad school, and I believe firmly that every child deserves a world-class public education, no matter what their zip code. In the General Assembly, I was proud to have sponsored legislation to bring full-day kindergarten to Loudoun County, and voted to give Virginia teachers much-needed pay raises and begin eliminating unnecessary standardized tests so that our teachers can spend more time teaching the whole child and less time teaching to the test. States and localities know best how to educate kids. The federal government can help by not imposing sweeping mandates on our K-12 schools and making sure states and localities have the funding they need. We need to teach kids real-life skills to compete for the jobs of today and the jobs of the future. This includes things like more emphasis on STEM education and career and technical education. Our kids need to become creative, critical thinkers, communicators, and collaborators. We need to pay our teachers a competitive salary so that we can retain the best talent. And we need to adequately fund school construction as a part of our nation's infrastructure plans. Another way that the federal government can help is when it comes to college affordability. In the General Assembly, I was proud to have created the Office of Student Loan Ombudsman to act as an advocate for kids with their student lenders, and to have worked to rein in for-profit lenders or for-profit colleges who were acting unscrupulously. In Congress, I'll make sure that the government continues to fund Pell Grants, Stafford loans, and other federal grants and loans, and fight back against Betsy DeVos and her agenda to put for-profit schools over our children's education.
Very good. Thank you so much, Senator Wexton. Congresswoman Comstock, the same question, please.
Thank you. I come from a family of educators. My mom is a teacher, my husband a teacher and a principal, and my sister serving in local schools here also. I am passionate about lifetime learning from pre-K to advanced degrees, and we know in the future jobs, you are not going to ever be able to stop educating yourself. My mother, that educator, she continues to be a docent in the museums, and she's online. She's constantly teaching herself, and that is our future, and I think that's exciting. And when I talk to groups like my Young Women's Leadership Program, I reinforce that so much, and there's nowhere that I think is doing a better job than here in Loudoun. I support it. I think I introduced that all-day kindergarten before you, so I'm glad we also are getting that now. We are seeing coding in kindergarten. This is exciting. The Academies of Loudoun, I just visited there recently. If you want to see some exciting things going on, you literally can see those light bulbs above those kids' heads when you walk through there. But it's in all of our schools here in Loudoun and throughout Northern Virginia. And this is what we are going to be investing in and continuing to do. And workforce development, that's going to be that lifelong learning. A lot of what we're doing with the tax bill is giving those incentives to companies to continue to educate their workers. You have businesses like Capital One who are training kids, maybe right out of high school on cybersecurity and getting them trained in there at no cost. That's a great price point for getting a quality education and a high-paying job. And we just passed advancements in Perkins loans and making sure we are going to make it easier to use that. And I'd like to mention the GI Bill that we took from being only 15 years to lifetime benefits so that our veterans we need to integrate into our education system in so many ways, and make sure they're getting those high quality jobs because they come out trained in cybersecurity, in so many great technical jobs, and we need to use them in every way we can. So I love when I meet our veterans and they tell us how wonderful it is to have those GI Bills. But the workforce development, the sky's the limit on education.
Thank you so much,
here in
Congressman
Loudoun, and I
Comstock.
thank
I
all of you
appreciate it.
involved in education.
All right, we're moving on to our next question. And that question will be asked by Maggie Parker and directed towards Congresswoman Comstock.
Yes, sir. Congresswoman Comstock, passenger and cargo growth at Dulles Airport has been threatened for years, largely because Congress has increased the number and destinations of flights allowed at Reagan National. What will you do to continue to protect Dulles Airport, further protect, and the economic benefits it provides to Loudoun County and Northern Virginia?
Well, thank you, because we've worked on that a lot with the airport, and I'm proud to, as a member of the Transportation Committee, to partner with them. What happens, unfortunately, in Congress, frequently, this happened to Congressman Wolf, it's happened to me now twice, is some of our colleagues, and this is bipartisan, and this year and past, it was a Texas delegation, but a Democrat actually put the bill forward, but the Republicans were in on it too, and they come forward and they want to change the slot rule so that more flights will go out of National Airport that makes it easier for them to get to, and they don't have to drive out to Dulles. But Dulles is such a vital economic essential for us. Every time this comes up, we have to fight it. And this year, as I've done in the past, and as I believe when I was back as a staffer with Congressman Wolf, we fought that and got them to back off on that. They say don't mess with Texas. We messed with Texas and we won. We got them to back off on the slots rule. And we were working on a bipartisan basis. We actually, we had to go in. I work with the airlines. We lobby all my colleagues. Every time this happens, I tell them, guys, we're going to beat you. We're going to do this because if you change those rules for Dulles, then everything else opens up for everybody else. So it's always an education effort. We have to lobby all the members. We do it. My colleague, Don Beyer, and I worked on that. We were on the floor together as it was going forward. They knew we had the votes. They pulled the bill. And I thank Congressman Beyer for when we went to the Northern Virginia Technology Council to talk about this. He gave me credit for working on this because this is one of those things, there's no headlines on this. Nobody, a lot of people, if you're not in the business community or not right here in Dulles, you don't know what the slot rule is, but it has a huge impact on our local economy, and we have to make sure that Dulles Airport is going to continue to be the vital artery, and as we expand our businesses, as I know we are going to here in this area, there's going to be nothing more important, and I've fought that and won, whether it's with Texas or any other western states, and will continue to do so.
Thank you, Congressman Comstock. Senator Wexton, the same question, please.
Thank you. Dulles is an extremely important economic driver for this region. Access to an international airport like Dulles is one of the top things that Amazon is looking for in making their decision about where to relocate. I was proud to be part of the solution in the state where we ponied up $50 million to bring down the cost per enplanement at Dulles to ensure that United would be able to remain there and keep it as a hub. We need to make sure that the perimeter rule, however, is not expanded. The plan for the Metropolitan Washington airports was supposed to be that Reagan National would be the short-haul airport and Washington Dulles would be the long-haul airport. And as a result, Dulles relied on that and made a lot of capital expenditures for things like the Underground Railroad there. But now Congress keeps expanding the perimeter rule and moving more and more flights out of National. Well, they can't accommodate all those flights. We need to make sure that the perimeter rule is not expanded any further. Also, we need to make sure that the phase 2 of the Silver Line It comes in on time, under budget, and with quality workmanship. Getting people to and from Dulles Airport more easily is going to make it more successful in the future.
Very good. All right, our next question will come from Jeffrey Novak, and Mr. Novak, please direct that to Senator Wexton.
Senator Wexton, do you support comprehensive immigration reform, including resolving the status of undocumented workers and other residents? And what other specific immigration reform proposals would you support?
America is a nation of immigrants, and our diversity is a great source of strength for us here in Northern Virginia. But today, our immigration system is failing. It's hurting our country and making it harder for immigrants to contribute to our economy. We need to address our immigration challenges in a bipartisan and comprehensive way. But President Trump's divisive rhetoric and policies are only making that more difficult. Immigration is vitally important to our Northern Virginia economy. We have many tech businesses who rely on H-1B visas, and we have over 30,000 unfilled cyber jobs here in Virginia. Our farmers rely on seasonal immigrant laborers, and we need to make sure that they have them. We need to find the right balance that gives American workers the chance to succeed, but still allows immigrant workers to fill the gaps that are holding back American businesses.
Thank you, Senator Wexton. Congressman,
contrast-
my apologies.
In contrast, there's been Republican control of Congress for years, and they've sat on their hands and put kids in cages. Our Congresswoman, who purports to be a moderate and independent voice,
Order, please. Order, please.
refused to join her Republican colleagues in signing a discharge petition that would have allowed a bill to protect Dreamers to come to the floor for a vote. Instead, she voted for a partisan bill that doesn't adequately address our broken immigration system, failed to protect Dreamers, makes deep cuts to legal immigration, which has benefited many of her constituents, and eliminates asylum protections. In Congress, I'll work for true, comprehensive immigration reform.
Thank you, Senator Wexton. Congresswoman Comstock, the same question, please.
I do support immigration reform, and again, like healthcare, it needs to be bipartisan. I voted for an immigration reform bill that had many of the pieces that, if you go back to sort of the Gang of Eight in the Senate and what they wanted, secure our borders. We know in order to get a bipartisan compromise, we have to do something to have increased border security. And so I support that. Again, our technology community. I've been out to Dulles, and you can see how we are able to use our technology to better secure our borders. And so we can get that in place. But we need to have an adequate supply of workers. I do support having additional immigration, but it needs to be legal in a fair system. We have so many people who are here. We have people who have played here, played by the rules, many on the H-1B visas. I have supported increasing those so that we can get those high quality workers. I think we need to, staple the visa to the degree and allow them to stay here, but also have a system that's easier for them to be able to get citizenship as well as for their children. So I think we need to continue to expand H-1Bs, also for the H-2Bs, for the temporary workers. I've worked with our agriculture community on that. We need to address the delays and the backlogs that are in the system, and I do support addressing DACA. And the bill that we voted on provided more ability for more DACA kids to be able to stay here. We support that. And when I've had people come into the office and they ask, can you support DACA? I said, yes, can we support DACA and also have border security? Because I think that's how you get the compromise. And you know what they often say? They say, that's fine. They're here, they want to have border security, and they want to be able to protect this. But I would like to mention my MS-13 bill to make sure we deport that in our system, that we also don't have criminal alien gang members allowed to stay here. I put that bill forward. It's bipartisan. My opponent opposes it.
Very good. Thank you so much, Congressman Comstock. All right, I just want to remind everyone, we have a limited amount of time with our candidates. We want to get to as many issues and questions as possible, and I'm going to ask you to please politely and kindly do refrain from any other distracting behavior and keep it to polite applause only. Thank you so much. All right, we're moving on to the next round of questions, and that we're going to begin with Stacy Metcalf, and you will direct that question to Congresswoman Comstock, please.
Congresswoman Comstock, nearly every corner of this nation is impacted by the ongoing opioid crisis. This is not only a major health crisis, but it's also depleting government resources and damaging the economies in many communities. What role or support should Congress be offering to address this law enforcement and health care crisis?
Thank you. This has been an incredible crisis that we have seen everybody in our nation impacted by. There's nobody that doesn't have a family member hit by addiction of some sort. When I first was elected, I got together with Sheriff Chapman, and we worked together on his heroin operations team, which was a comprehensive 360-degree approach. We know we need education, prevention. We know addiction is a disease. We have worked with those who are the faces of recovery. You know, people like Nick Yakub, who has been a wonderful leader here in this community. I know a lot of you know him. Thank you. Oh, Nick is here. And he talks about, this is about sick people getting well, not bad people. And I think we've had a real sea change on how we approach addiction. That $4 billion that I talked about, that has been a result of extensive bipartisan work together to make sure we are going to have naloxone available, which the sheriff has been great on in Loudoun, so that we don't have unnecessary deaths. And Loudoun is one of the few areas where we've actually reduced the number of deaths recently. But we know we need to have more education and training, and we need to be in our schools, but we also need to be in the workplaces. I was at an auto body shop where I was asking about business, asked about things. Well, what else keeps you up at night? And he said they had had 2 overdoses, 1 death there and 1 overdose, just in a small business. When I go and talk to businesses, this inevitably comes up. So I am part of the bipartisan coalition that works on this. I have legislation that's currently in that I think the Senate may be sending back our way and finalized. There is no red or blue on this. There is pretty much anything. The president declared this a national health care emergency. When we were down there on that date when he proclaimed that, there was no daylight on the needs of anybody. Everybody has been working together on this, and I thank Sheriff Chapman for his leadership and all of our law enforcement throughout the 10th District, and look forward to continuing to work with you on this important national crisis.
Thank you so much, Congressman Comstock. Senator Wexton, please, the same question.
I agree that the heroin and opioid crisis is a true public health emergency. Since 2014, more people die in Virginia from overdoses than from automobile accidents and firearms. I was proud to be a part of the governor's task force to combat heroin and opioid use in Virginia. And I passed some very constructive legislation as a result of that. Legislation to modernize the prescription monitoring program in Virginia, so we can find out when people are going from doctor to doctor and doctors who are engaging in pill mills. Legislation to get more Narcan into the hands of people who need it most. But we also need to realize, this is not something where we can arrest our way out of it. This is not necessarily a law enforcement issue only. It's also a treatment issue. We need to make sure that there are adequate resources for people who need help. We need to make sure that they can get medication-assisted treatment, that there's inpatient beds available, that there's outpatient treatment, and that we prioritize and include things like drug courts for people who are trying to stay clean. And it's important to remember that every dollar HHS is taking to support kids who are in detention, immigrant children who are being held in detention, is a dollar that they can't spend on drug treatment and things that will really impact and positively help our kids.
Very good. Thank you so much, Senator Wexton. Our next question will come from Maggie Parker, and you will direct that to Senator Wexton.
Providing a broad diversity of affordable and workforce housing options is a struggle throughout Virginia's 10th Congressional District. What can be done on the federal level to address the high cost of housing in North Virginia and other communities?
Affordable housing is a real problem here in Loudoun County. In fact, when Amazon was listing their list of things that they are looking for, the 6 factors that they were seeking in an area, the one thing that we were missing here in Loudoun County was diversity of housing and affordable housing. The good news is that there are things that can be done. There are grants and loans and things at the federal level which unfortunately have not kept up pace with what we need. Congress can help by ensuring full development and full funding for community development block grants and home investment partnerships programs to allow localities, states, and the federal government to pool their resources with private builders to make it affordable for not just affordable housing, but workforce housing. Every year, my kids start school and they tell me about their teachers. And it's always interesting to me how our teachers here in Loudoun County, a lot of them can't afford to live in Loudoun County. Some of them even live in West Virginia. And we need to make sure that our teachers, our sheriff's deputies are able to live here in the region that they're representing.
Thank you very much, Senator Wexton. Congressman Comstock, the same question, please.
Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, our booming economy is providing more money that we are going to have for addressing all of these national problems that we have, and it does make it easier, particularly in an area like ours where we are going to see more money, that $550 million surplus that we now have in Virginia. But we also, when we did the data center legislation when I was in the State House, that ended up yielding $120 million that continues to come every year to Loudoun County alone and throughout the state. So I know the Loudoun Board of Supervisors, it's on a bipartisan basis. I know my friend Suzanne Volpe, she is very involved in affordable housing and is impact and is very committed to this. And I know all of the board is. But I know we always work with folks, whether it's working on getting grants that we got for our local roads here. When Secretary Chow came out on that, we worked with the board and we were able to apply for grants. Whenever there's any opportunity there where people want to move forward on this, we can work together with them. One of the issues, we know we always see it, it is an issue of what kind of growth are we going to have, and that's a community discussion on where the growth is going to be, how it's going to be, and I always support having our state and local officials decide that because you need to get that buy-in and community support from that. But we have and continue to have strong support at HUD for continued affordable housing efforts, and it often is matched up with the jobs. Have that follow the jobs. So, with the economy doing as well as it is, if we see another 4.2% growth, we are going to have more money there that is going to be able to help us all solve these problems in an easier way.
Very good. Thank you so much, Congressman Comstock. Our next question will come from Jeffrey Novak, and please direct that question to Congresswoman Comstock.
President Trump has moved to deny federal employees an expected 2% across-the-board pay increase, citing budget deficits and serious economic conditions. This move will obviously have a negative impact on all federal employees, including tens of thousands of 10th District residents. Where do you stand on the president's move?
Well, when that proposal first came out, I was the first member of Congress, I think, to reach out both to the White House and to the administration, and to point out to them that when we had the freezes during the Obama administration, because remember this was, unfortunately, freezes have been bipartisan, and you cannot balance the budget on the backs of our federal employees. When I was in that has been my position since I worked on federal employees issues for Congressman Wolf back in the 90s. So I have already been working with my colleagues on the Appropriations Committee. They support having that pay raise. Appreciate that the president said he was going to reconsider it, but we are still working to make sure we put it into the budget and make sure. I am confident that we are going to have those pay raises next year. And it's important because in a booming economy, the federal government needs to be competitive and be able to bring in talent, like in those cybersecurity jobs, in our homeland security jobs, in those important NIH jobs where we are doing, cures and treatments, and we need to have the talent there. So that's why I have the support of NARF, the Federal Employee Union, works with me on this. We got together the first day, started our lobbying effort to make sure we're going to get those pay raises. Other things that I've worked on for federal employees is to get them paid family leave. Again, we often say government needs to be more like business. Well, if we're going to be more like business, we're a big business, right? With federal government, we're large. So if we're going to be more like business, we need to do what large businesses do, which is provide that paid family leave. So I am committed, and that's why I have the support of NARF, because they know I will have their back, I will be standing up for them, and I will stand up to anyone who is trying to take those pay raises away. I've done it, and I will continue to do that, and I have sponsored the legislation for the pay increase that my colleagues have had. And that's bipartisan here in this area, and it always has been.
Very good. Thank you. Senator Wexton, the same question, please.
President Trump's announcement that he will freeze federal workers' pay and fail to give them raises that were scheduled is just another attack on federal workers. He's attacked their rights. He's made it easier for them to be reassigned, to change their schedules, and called back their grievance procedures. Now, my opponent is saying that she is a friend of the federal workers, but what she's not telling you is that one of the first things that she did upon taking office, after Donald Trump took office, was vote for the Holman Rule, which would allow Congress to reduce any single federal employee's pay to $1. Now, even if they didn't do that, what does that say for federal employee morale? And she voted for the July spending plan, which included these pay freezes in it. So although she talks a good game now, she already voted to freeze federal workers' pay.
Okay, very good. Just a programming note, we have just enough time for 2 more questions, so it's a note for both the candidates and the panelists. And so I'm going to turn to Stacey Metcalf for a question to please pose to Congresswoman Comstock. I'm out of order. Senator Wexton, I do apologize.
Yes,
Thank
okay.
you. Thank
Senator Wexton, under the previous administration, the Department of Labor worked to alter employee classifications and independent contractor rules to address what they said were employer abuses. Do you support changes that would make more employees eligible for overtime pay and those that limit the use of contract employees?
Many employers abuse the independent contractor classification. And when people are independent contractors, they don't get many of the benefits that they should. They don't get things like paid vacation, sick leave, retirement benefits. So I absolutely support the rights of people to be classified properly and think that this is something that is appropriate.
Thank you so much, Senator Wexton. Congressman Comstock, the same question.
First of all, I would like to address again that the pay freezes. The budget did not include pay freezes. It was silent on it, and usually it goes through. The Obama administration did this. This is a bipartisan problem. It needs bipartisan solutions. I don't support changing the independent contractor rule. To have a vibrant economy, we need to provide that flexibility. And there were a lot of labor rules in the last administration that we have. There have been numerous regulations that we were able to roll back to not have these onerous red tape and regulations. I know from the Chamber's outlines of the concerns that you have on limiting and imposing these new regulations, that you understand that this would hurt our business growth and hurt opportunities. So I don't support limiting independent contractors in that way. I've been on the legislation to provide more freedom there. And one of the things there is if we can have a vibrant economy and have independent contractors, have a lot of flexibility. You can be an independent contractor, you can then work in a big business, you can do different things. But if we have more portable and affordable health care and other benefits that we're allowed to deduct, one of the things that we did in the tax bill is provide tax incentives for businesses to provide paid family leave for more businesses. And now that makes it easier to provide that. We want to have these benefits, make it easier, provide tax incentives. So instead of having these regulations from the Labor Department, which the last administration did, we're trying to work with businesses to give them tax incentives to do things that attract that talent pool. I mean, right now, the biggest problem that employers have, and I know you all see it, is you can't find the workers. So it's a workers' market right now. And so these issues, we want to give the businesses incentives so that they can go out and get those workers, give them paid family leave, make sure that they, still have a viable business, but they can provide those advantages there. And it's a win-win solution. And when you have this booming economy, those are the kind of opportunities you can provide.
Very good. Thank you so much, Congressman Comstock. All right, this will be our last question, and I'd like to ask Maggie Parker to pose this last question to Congresswoman Comstock.
Glad to. Staying on the theme of regulation, and this is kind of is a two-part question. How would you ensure that federal agencies use best practices to evaluate the economic cost of federal regulations? And secondly, would you support the idea that any regulation expected to cost more than $100 million have to be congressionally approved annually?
Yes. The answer is I have supported that. I know that is part of, the Chamber and Northern Virginia Technology Council and others understand how important this is. I've supported that. That's, this all goes to how are we going to be a business-friendly environment. Virginia has been one of the top states for business. Certainly when I was in the state, I was up there at number one. We need to get back there because we're low tax, low regulation. And businesses come here because of that, a right-to-work state. My opponent opposes those right-to-work laws. We haven't gone through regulation by regulation, but I'm sure if you look at your regulatory concerns and all the red tape, unfortunately, she's been in the bottom half, whether it's NFIB ratings or on chamber ratings on those issues. There's a real difference here. I've been a small business person. I understand those regulations, and I will continue to work with the business community. And I think that's why I have earned the support of all of the business groups that are involved in these issues, because they understand I work with them, but I also work to have strong support for our employees, things like that paid family leave that we put in the tax incentives, making sure we keep the tax treatment for child care costs that are in there and that applies whether you're an individual contractor or you're with a big business. So we can have that win-win solution here, working together with our business communities that are so wonderful and give back on all these fronts. I mean, this Loudoun Chamber and Northern Virginia Technology Community, you are working with all of our employees, with our schools, providing that STEM pipeline, providing help for all of our students here to create this wonderful workforce. We don't need to have either the federal government or the state government come in and tell you what to do. What we need to do is provide incentives to help advance everybody to their God-given talent. So thank you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Many regulations have good intent, but the people writing them don't spend enough time listening to smaller local businesses. Now, in the Senate, I've supported a regulatory reduction program, pilot program here in Virginia, which is going to take a good hard look at all of our regulations and eliminate those that are unduly burdensome or duplicative. And we do perform an economic analyses of the regulations that we're imposing. But saying get out of the way is a half-baked response. It's the government's job to regulate externalities and protect its citizens. We can't impose arbitrary caps. We need to keep communities safe. We need to stop environmental disasters from happening. And you can't impose an arbitrary cap to say the cost of an environmental disaster like the Horizon Deepwater spill shouldn't be more than $100 million, preventing that sort of thing from happening in the future. We need to have we shouldn't have a one-size-fits-all. We need an approach that works for large and small businesses, but that includes not imposing arbitrary caps. We need a reasoned approach that strikes the right balance to protect consumers, the environment, and our businesses.
Very good. Thank you so much. It is now time for our closing statements. As indicated before by the pre-debate coin toss, it is determined that Senator Wexton will go first with the closing statement. So, Senator Wexton, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tony. The time has come for the constituents of the 10th District to elect a representative who will truly protect and represent them, not just when the spotlight shines on them, but all the time. A representative who says what she believes and does what she says. A representative who's willing and able to work across the aisle to get results for her constituents. My opponent is a masterful political chameleon. What she doesn't tell you is that most of the issues she currently champions are those she previously opposed, or vice versa, depending on how the political winds are blowing and who's watching. On sexual harassment, my opponent styles herself as a champion of Me Too. She hopes you'll forget that one of the first things she did after Donald Trump took office was to vote to repeal a rule that would have required federal contractors to better protect victims of sexual harassment. On federal workers, she pretends to be fighting for them, but what she won't tell you is that in July, before it made the headlines and anyone was watching, she voted to impose the very cuts to federal workers' pay that were imposed by Donald Trump in recent weeks. And of course, she voted against the bipartisan transportation bill that has brought hundreds of millions of dollars of new road spending to Northern Virginia, but she shows up for the photo ops and to take credit when things go right. I started my career here in Loudoun County as a prosecutor, not a politician. In Richmond, I've passed over 40 bills, each and every one with broad bipartisan support. I'll do the same in Congress and work to find solutions for the challenges facing our region and our country, not score political points. And unlike our current Congresswoman, I will truly stand up to the dangerous policies of this president and his administration. I ask for your support on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Wexton. Congressman Comstock, it's now time for your closing statement.
My record is one of getting results on your priorities. I have focused on getting those results by bringing us together and moving us forward. Results, not resistance. I was happy to get my research and development tax credit bill back when I was in the State House, signed by Governor McAuliffe, and I was just as happy to have the permanent federal R&D tax credit that I fought for end up in the tax bill, along with my $2,000 child tax credit bill that I stood on this stage 4 years ago and said we need to have that for our families, and we got it in that tax bill, and I fought for that. On sexual harassment and fighting hate crimes, I've led with my friend, Democrat Debbie Dingell. We've gotten progress on this because she understands, as I do, that these are issues about protecting the vulnerable and those who need a voice and doing the right thing. So we were able to pass an anti-hate crimes resolution working together. We were able to pass sexual harassment resolution that now requires training in Congress, and we're continuing to work together. And just this week, there were stories focused on that friendship, and we have had hearings with Democrats and Republican women together. This isn't a partisan issue. This is personal, and we're working together on this. You know, I've been working on the human trafficking issue and getting results there since I was in the State House. Detective Bill Wolf, who's here, we worked together back then, but he came and told me MS-13 is causing problems. So I made sure we increased the penalties on gang members who were trafficking children. Then on the heroin issue, that's an issue where we're all working together, and we have gotten concrete results. When Sheriff Chapman and I initiated the efforts on the HOT team, we needed a multifaceted approach, and that's why I went back to Congress, worked on a bipartisan basis, worked with that caucus, and made sure that we were going to get that money and that support for you. These are results, again, that are working for you, that we've worked together on. And on November 6th, I ask for your vote to continue to work on these positive results that are booming our economy, that are making our country more safe and moving our country forward. Thank you.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate that. How about, all together, as one community, as one county, we give a big round of applause to both of our candidates and the fantastic job that they've done. Come on. I meant what I said before, leadership is important. It's never more important than it is now, and the fact that both of you are willing to lend your time, your talent, and your energy to seek this role to represent our families and our communities in the House of Representatives, it means a lot to us, and so I thank you for that. I also want to thank our sponsors for today's program, Nova Loudoun Hospital, our Spotlight sponsor, Novak, all of our Policymakers Series sponsors. Thank you to my fellow chamber executives and the Northern Virginia Tech Council, as well as the Dwight Shore School at George Mason University for their partnership on today's event. I hope that you will take heed to the same thing that both candidates said at the conclusion of their closing statements. Get out and vote on November 6th. And thank you for spending your morning with us.